Our next presenters are Schlueter Ben Ellering. Schlueter is a channel sales executive with Sophos covering the North Central region, which includes Minnesota, Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Her job is to help grow and develop partners in the North Central region through engagement and training. She creates a strong and educated partner community that can effectively communicate the Sophos message. Rose focuses on customer verticals and best security practices, as well as managing and finding sales leads and opportunities in the region. Ben Ellering is a channel system engineer at Sophos, also covering the North Central region. He has 20 years experience working in networking security field. The majority of his career has been working on the end user side, specializing in network security as a network security engineer. Please welcome Rose and Ben.
I will download suspicious software.
I will download suspicious attachments. I will download suspicious apps. If there were a button that said download malware, I'd click it. Oh, I'll download malware.
I can click. I'll download the plague.
And email it to everyone.
I will visit suspicious websites. Gambling.
Pornography, BitTorrents. FreeStreamingMovies.com. FreeLicenseCodes.com.
FreeNuclearCodes.com.
I just ended up on a watch list.gov.
ExpensiveLawsuit.com/we're all going to prison.
I will help that Nigerian prince transfer some money.
He's a prince for crying in the night. He needs some help.
And in return, he's going to help me out. We're going to be friends.
We might even get married.
I love meeting new people. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is true. I don't even know where Nigeria is. I think it, yeah, I don't know.
I will lose my smartphone.
My tablet,
My laptop.
on an airplane, in a taxi, in my hotel. In Thailand,
At Target. I was swimming and blogging. And then I was just swimming. I will be unable to configure my email software. Oh, no.
even if you tell me how to do it.
I don't even be listening.
You're thinking about other things.
Machine guns.
Puppies, clowns, the Crimean War.
The long-term effects of chloroform.
A goat. I will need your help. A lot. For just a second.
Right now.
Before work. After work. At 2 a.m.
On Christmas morning. While you're on vacation.
During your own wedding.
During the birth of your child. Your child's wedding.
During your vacation for your child's wedding on Christmas morning, which is on a weekend. Hey! I know that you're at your wedding, but I just gave my social security number to someone from Iran. And I need you to call me back.
Hello. I was like, my voice is very loud. I probably don't need this, so I'm trying to talk as quietly as I can, but still project out. I'm Schlueter with Sophos, and I've got Ben Ellering who will be doing the majority of the presenting today. But quickly, just wanted to kind of do a quick intro on what it is that we'll be talking about. But first of all, has anybody ever felt that way? Does anybody know anyone like that in the video? Don't be afraid to raise your hands because they're not here. So that is definitely something to take into consideration, and those are the things in Sophos that we're trying to fix. What we're going to do today is kind of go over the 7 deadly IT sins, take a look at those, how they relate to the industry that we're in, but then also take a look at some of the products that we have in Sophos that are going to help solve those issues that you're having. So the 7 deadly IT sins are going to be identified as mobile negligence, Mac malice, unsecured Wi-Fi, unencrypted email, faulty firewall, unencrypted files, and delinquent web filtering. So that's what we're going to go over today. We're going to do that very quickly. We're going to spray with the fire hose, and then we're going to be sitting at our table, so we'll be happy to answer questions at the end here, but then continue to talk with you during the vendor breakout. So without further ado, we'll jump into the first one, which is mobile negligence, and I'll turn it over to Ben to start going through things.
All right, thanks, Rose. So we have about a half hour to talk about a lot of stuff. You're going to hear a lot of security discussions today. You're going to hear a lot of different vendors talk about different solutions and that sort of stuff. Just kind of keep in mind that we're all here to really help secure your network. There's a lot of things that we need to worry about. There's a lot of things that we need to kind of take into account as we take a look at products that are out there, how they work together. There's a lot of complexity just in security in and of itself. So we're not going to talk specifically about any products. We're going to talk more high level, just kind of what some of the issues are, which I'm sure you're all aware of, what they are going to be, and the ones that you're dealing with today. Just kind of keep that in mind. And one of the things that we think is important at Sophos, we've been doing this for over 30 years, we've been doing this for a very long time, is we really feel that security needs to change. It needs to change in what people used to think and how they used to deploy it, and it needs to be more work together as a system. That's what the bad guys are doing. They're having very sophisticated attacks, very sophisticated networks, very coordinated, and they have update networks just like Microsoft and all those organizations that are trying to help protect you, on stealing data. So as we go through this, just kind of keep in mind, we're going to just, again, talk high level. We're talking about mobile devices. This has really become a really big challenge in a lot of industries. You look at what are the big drivers of pushing mobile devices, it was usually the execs, right? They're on the road, they want to be able to get their email from anywhere. I already have this phone, it's already ready to go. Why don't you just set it up for me so I can get my corporate email? They don't understand all of the things that happen behind the scenes and what that really does and how that opens an organization up to a lot of issues. We're seeing, obviously, when you take a look at malware, and we take a look at some people call it viruses, whatever you want to call it, it's really the bad stuff that's out there. We're seeing a major increase in people going after the mobile devices. And why is that? Because they aren't as protected. There's still a lot of organizations who are still very young in getting their mobile practice, security online, and getting it included within their mobile, or within their actual infrastructure. The other thing is, users have really, they do things to make their life easier, right? So if I can store my passwords, if I can save my passwords, if I can not have a PIN, and I can just go to my email and get it, that's much easier. That's what they want to do. They don't want to go through those steps. So when you start introducing these little security changes, it's a big change to their environment. So there's always a lot of pushback. What we want to do is try and make it as easy as possible and as seamless as possible to implement those security practices with as little impact to the end users as we can. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we continue to go on. Obviously, the mobile device is much easier to steal, right? So phone, actually don't even have mine on me, so you can actually go steal it out of my bag if you want it. The nice thing is it's locked and it's encrypted, so just get it for your phone. But those are the things that are really easy for people to just misplace or walk off. What we want to do is we want to make sure that if you're allowing them access to their corporate data, storing corporate documents, sending emails, that that's going to be secure. One of the things that we're also seeing, I'm sure you've all heard of ransomware. Ransomware has definitely made its way into the mobile market. They're locking these phones with keys, and now you have to use an unlock code to get past it. And this is only the first slide. We only have less than a half hour, so I'm going to have to pick the pace up here a little bit. We're going to skip a few slides. So basically what it comes down to is understand what your users are doing with the mobile devices. Understand your risk. Really, everything is about risk analysis. It comes down to what is my risk? Is that risk worth allowing the user to access their data in this fashion? Sometimes it's a risk that you have no choice. The exec says, I'm going to do this, you need to set it up, you're my IT, so do it for me and just get it done. So sometimes your risk analysis, they don't realize that it is a big deal. What you have to do is you have to put that dollars, put the money, put it in terms that they can understand. That, okay, if we do this, we have to protect it, just like a laptop, which means it's going to cost X amount of dollars. Make sure you have all that information. And then it's really just doing the little things. And this is going to be kind of the theme across the board. Make sure you're doing best practices. Make sure you're doing the things that are already on those systems to help secure them. Now we look at Apple. How many people have Macs? There's a handful. How many are running iOS? There's quite a few more. So when you start looking at not only the Mac side of things, but why people tend to think that Apple is less susceptible is because they actually do a really good job of having control within their environment, only opening up applications and having a pretty good vetting process to make sure that the people that are publishing the apps are actually going to be legitimate. They actually, if you look at the ransoms and you look at people who will pay for somebody to develop a piece of malware, this is any Mac or iOS, they're at the top of the list. If you can develop a piece of malware and get it in the Apple, the iOS store, you're going to be able to make more money doing that than you will if you develop one for Android. So why aren't people doing it? Well, it really comes down to the fact that in the past they haven't been as popular. Now we are seeing a lot of people are running iOS, and the popularity is definitely increasing, and we're seeing that change. So we're starting to see more of an issue, and really it comes down to making sure that you're deploying the same sorts of protections. You have to look at things a little bit differently when you're looking at Mac viruses or Mac issues versus a lot of the open source stuff or even Microsoft. So you need to kind of keep that inner security practice. Even though they have those controls in place, they are still very susceptible to issues. And again, ransomware issues. A lot of the ransomware issues are very sophisticated, right? They're going over HTTPS. How many people are doing HTTPS inspection on their network? True HTTPS inspection. That's scary. Majority of the threats today are going over HTTPS. Why? It's encrypted, end to end. You don't know what's in that payload. So now we take a look at that, and we look at Google. You go to Google search, they direct you to HTTPS. Why are they doing that? To protect themselves. But that raises issues and challenges because now, again, you don't really know what's going over if you're not doing true HTTPS inspection. Ransomware issues, really, definitely, HTTPS is a big deal. Make sure you're doing that inspection. And this is just not even just as it relates to Mac, but even any systems as it relates to inspecting traffic. Again, same sort of thing. Do your basics, do the things that you need to do, and then understand where your risks are once you get things that are already in place that you know you can do today to protect those environments. You have a lot of security in your infrastructure today. Are you using it correctly? Are you using it to its fullest capabilities? If you're not, there are little things you can do there to help secure your environment. Wi-Fi. This one's fun. So, how many have problems ever finding a wireless network? You ever had a problem finding one that may be free, it's unencrypted, you can get on? They're out there all over the place. If you go to our website and just type in war biking, there's a James Line, really smart guy, did this war biking. He did it in a lot of different major cities. He did it in San Francisco. But just take a look at that and understand that users, when they find a wireless network, they don't care. It's their access. All right, I can do my online banking. I can get my corporate email. They don't care what wireless they connected to. They're going to try and find the wireless that pops up, and they're going to try and connect to it. So you don't really know what's happening behind the scenes. And in a lot of cases, if they connect to a wireless hotspot, they may get presented with a screen where they can accept terms, or they can even accept maybe you're going to do some man in the middle sort of thing. So you can put some pretty fancy screens together and make it look like, okay, I'm just accepting these wireless terms, and what's happening is, yes, I'm getting on free Wi-Fi, but the free Wi-Fi that I'm connected to, they're sniffing all of my traffic and they're pulling all of my data. So your online banking, all of that traffic, they're doing HTTPS inspection, they're capturing bank records, they're capturing passwords, they're capturing all of that information and they're storing it. They might not necessarily do anything with it, but they're going to keep it and now they're going to be able to sell it to a high competitor. So unsecure Wi-Fi is very important to take a look at just securing your wireless networks. You use web encryption, you use some of the encryption technologies that are out there can be cracked in like 30 seconds with different utilities you can get off the internet. So make sure you're deploying proper security practices on your Wi-Fi networks. Again, there's just a lot of different issues and a lot of things to kind of keep track of when we look at securing wireless networks. If you provide guest wireless access, make sure you're also securing that. Remember, if your network is used as a jumping off point for an attack, you're now in that loop. You can become liable for that if you aren't doing the things that you need to do to protect yourself. Same things, do your standard stuff. There's security already built in. You probably want to make sure you're layering some additional securities on top of these things, but again, do the things that you need to do. Make sure you go through and do an audit of your wireless network and of the access points in your environment. Make sure you know what they are. How many have wireless printers? And actually go through and turn off the Wi-Fi on the wireless printers if you're not going to use it, or even secure it. So a lot of organizations that will just take a network printer, plug it into the network, and they'll think they're ready to go, but they don't realize that the wireless is turned on as well. It's actually accessible. Email. So unencrypted email, we're going to talk a little bit about encryption in general. We have a little later on talking about file encryption, but how many are looking at an email encryption project today? And number, how many do email encryption today? So we're definitely seeing that is a little bit, it's been around longer, so there are more people that have this sort of technology. Email encryption is kind of a pain, right? Because you have this email that you want to encrypt. You have to figure out, okay, if we have this content, how are we going to secure it? Are we going to do it through DLP rules? Are we going to do it through user-triggered process where they know they're sending traffic? And then you also have to worry about the recipient. So if we're going to encrypt this message, how is it going to get to the recipient? And is the recipient going to be able to actually see that content? Lots of challenges in email encryption. There are different ways to go through and protecting email as it relates to snooping and being able to just spin up a traffic analysis sniffer and be able to capture that data. But when we take a look at making sure that the data itself is encrypted and that email transmission, we just want to make sure that we can't encrypt all email because that's just going to be impossible. It's going to be a big challenge. So again, how do you identify that content? When we start talking about file encryption, it'll have a few tie-ins a little bit to email, but really it comes down to understanding content you want to encrypt and where is it going. Is it going to a trusted partner or a trusted vendor or somebody that I know, some trusted entity? Then you have different ways that you can do email encryption, or is it going to somebody that I have no control over? That's where the challenges come in when we start talking about email encryption. We want to again try and make that as easy as possible so that business can still get done, but we're securing this content. Again, real easy. Email is flying all over the internet. You just throw on a sniffer trace, and your own, you can capture all kinds of interesting content. A lot of it is really useless, but they're going to deploy the same sorts of technologies that we use in our networks, DLP, that sort of stuff, to kind of go through and mine all that data and say, okay, well, if I find social security numbers, or if I find this type of pattern, take this and this is going to be my more high risk or my more valued data, so this is what I'm going to go through in a little bit more detail. So email is definitely a challenge. For a lot of you, it looks like actually have some sort of a deployment method for encrypting messages today, so that's good. But definitely always need to keep reevaluating, taking a look at, are there easier ways to make my content secure. Firewalls. So when we look at firewalls, this is, this is over the last 5-8 years, really been quite a change in the industry, right? Back in the day, you had your checkpoint firewall, those are your stateful packet inspection, you looked at source, you looked at destination, you looked at port, right? That's all you really cared about. Well, now we know almost everything's running over 80. Most of the bad stuff is migrating over to 443, and that's supposed to be the secure side. So we look at firewalls have really evolved into more than just what they were initially brought up for, right? Just do that perimeter protection, just look at 84, or look at your ports, look at your source, look at your destination, allow or deny. Now we actually have to look inside that content, and look inside that data, those packets, and understand that is this, even though it's going over port 80 or even though it's going over 443, what type of traffic is it? Is it going to be communication to a command and control? Or I'm going to download some ransomware, crypto locker, or something along those lines. So really when we take a look at firewalls, a lot of people will call them, UTMs, maybe a next generation firewall. There's a lot of marketing terms that describe this piece of hardware and infrastructure. If you think about what you want to do is you want to protect the perimeter, right? This is your gateway from the inside to the outside. So what we want to do is we want to look at all the different ways that we need to protect that data. And we need to protect those communications. So you have ATP, the Advanced Threat Protection. There's buzzwords all over the place for these firewalls. You have application control, you have web app firewall, you have IPS, you have AAV, you have web filtering, email filtering. All this stuff kind of tied into these boxes. Well, why has it made that evolution? Well, again, this is the gateway in and out of the network. So why not inspect as much traffic as you can here to be able to catch as much stuff? This is also where HTTPS inspection should absolutely be set up. Yes, it's kind of a pain in the butt, and there is a lot more to it because you have to enforce certificates and get all of that stuff set up appropriately. But if you're not doing it, you're really going to be missing a lot of things within your environment. So what we want to do is when we look at all these things that these firewalls have to protect against. And in the past, we only cared about devices, right? My mobile device now is a new device that we're worrying about. My Windows computer, my servers, the printers, that's what we cared about, device-to-device communication. What we've seen is really, and we are thinking of our networks in a much different way now. Devices are great, but as a user, I can have 4 or 5 different devices. If I have 4 or 5 different devices, why should I have to, as an administrator, write 4 or 5 different policies for that one user? So what we want to do is we want to think about these networks, and this is one of the things that we do a really good job of, is my user community. If I have Jill in finance, I don't care what device she connects up with. I want Jill in finance to get Jill in finance's policy. Or web filter policy, or protection policy, if we're doing encryption or encryption policy. We want to make sure that we can define that policy around Jill in finance and not around the 4 different devices that Jill uses to access. It does a lot of things for administrators. It simplifies your policy, which a more simple policy is actually a more secure policy. The more complex tends to be the more holes that will be introduced into a network. And the other thing that it does for you is now when you look at reporting, I can run a report on Jill, and I can see that Jill has a risk factor of 4, whatever that number ends up being. She might be a high-risk user, and she has she has access to high-risk data, or data that's very valued. Company financial data, probably different things within the finance department. You can understand you might want to grab some data from there. So when we take a look at how we're going to set these policies up, how we're going to do this sort of infrastructure deployment, really we want to start thinking about it from more along the user lines. And we actually have a patented technology called the user layer. Some argue if you want to add the 8th layer to the OSI, you have pros and cons for that. True, people that get into EOSI levels might argue against it because it's been that way forever and we don't want to change it. I'm still on the fence on whether we should think about adding any layer in EOSI called the user layer. So again, firewalls, really asking these devices to do a lot of stuff. The issue comes down in almost every discussion I have is people have just loads of bandwidth. And you throw one of these boxes in and now we have to inspect all of this traffic. So all of my loads of bandwidth that I'm paying very little for, I'm putting an expensive piece of equipment in that's actually throttling some of that in some cases. So sizing becomes important for firewalls, but I also think we need to change our thought process a little bit. Is when we look at how much bandwidth security takes, it takes bandwidth. Most people think of it as, this is going to cause a business impact to my user. It's going to slow them down. Well, yes, that's true, but if we actually will take a look and architect our networks, that security takes bandwidth, and we design it that way, it should be no problem, right? The problem is when we look at this, we think of this stuff as really causing a drain on the network, really causing a problem within my infrastructure, and it's really because we haven't taken into consideration when we're doing the whole network design and architecture that we have to allow for this overhead. If we don't allow for this overhead and we put it in and now the users are complaining, what are you going to do? You're going to rip out security? Most people do that. They rip out or they lessen their security policy in favor for business getting done, which there's a lot of reasons why you do that. But if we were just to change our thought process a little bit, we can get that into the mix. Lots of different examples of threats. I don't need to sit here and go through all of these different options, but you can see there's a lot of entry points into a network. There's a lot of different ways you can gain access. Most people are going to take the path of least resistance, the easiest way to get in. So this definitely happens. When you look at all these different ways that you can get into a system, that's why security, having all these individual point products, is starting to actually show to be a very interesting security hole because they're not sharing data, they're not sharing information together. So my endpoint is out here on an island by itself, my firewall is on an island by itself. You can just share that data and understand what's happening across those two. You'll have a much more robust infrastructure. Files, unencrypted files. I think this is probably one of the easiest ways to protect an infrastructure. How many encrypt their file within an organization? Handful. How many do full disk encryption on their laptops? Quite a few more. And I'm sure you know that full disk encryption on the laptop, the only thing it's protecting you from is that device being stolen or that laptop being, or that hard drive being ripped out of that laptop. I have full disk encryption on my laptop out there right now. It's powered up. So I'm past the power on authentication, I'm past the full disk encryption part. Yes, I have my screen locked, but that's the Windows password, right? So if you can figure that out, you can get on my system. Full disk encryption is doing nothing for me right now. What we want to do is we want to protect the data. And this is compliance across the board. That's what it's all about, right? Protecting the data. So if we can encrypt the files, and the file is encrypted, now if somebody gets access to it, does it matter? It does to some extent, but they're getting access to encrypted content. Are they going to have the supercomputers needed to try and crack that encryption? Or are they even going to bother? Because there's much easier targets out there. They might worry about, and they might actually try and crack that if you're some secret government entity or you have some amazing trade secrets that that are worth trying to get. So if you think about it, when you look at file encryption, if you can encrypt that content, no matter where it resides, file server, on the desktop itself, any cloud account. So how many people are backing up your mobile devices? There's a lot of different ways that you can do backups. What we want to do is if we can encrypt the file, we can encrypt that content no matter where it resides. We can make it so the end user doesn't even know that this encryption happens behind the scenes. They're part of your infrastructure. You deploy the programs needed to be able to go through and unencrypt that content as they're reading the files. They don't know that happens. So here's a way that you can add a layer of security to protect your data that doesn't have to change a user's process. We have lots of ways that we can do that. And again, we look at allowing them access on their mobile device, so we can encrypt that content, that data, no matter where it sits. So I think that's an important aspect when we start talking about encrypted files, is making sure that we are going above and beyond just the full disk encryption, because that really doesn't cover you in a lot of issues. If I get infected with something on my laptop, that full disk encryption does nothing for me. I can send up, they can take all those emails or all those messages and they can upload them to their own data store, and they're not encrypting. They're encrypting the files on top of full disk encryption. Now I'm able to do that as well. So basically, this is just saying that a lot of people do full disk encryption. We see we need to expand that thought process. Web filtering. Almost out of time here, so who isn't doing web filtering? Very, very, very small percentage. And again, most of you aren't doing HTTPS web filtering, so you're only really doing maybe a quarter of the puzzle. When you look at web filtering, there's a lot of things around web filtering that are starting to come into play. So we have a couple different ways that we can do web filtering. What I like to try and do is describe web filtering as that's going to be a policy that's going to allow your users to go where you want them to go, and not where they should, where they shouldn't go. There's another component that we layer on top of that called web security. Web security is when they go to a website that they're supposed to go to, MSN, any website that you're allowing them access to. Now we're actually looking at that website and making sure that that content contained within that website is good or legitimate. There's a lot of new technologies. One is malvertising. And what malvertising is essentially, as soon as you go to a website, everybody's presenting ads today, right? So what these guys are doing is they're buying a legitimate ad space from an advertising broker. So the advertising broker is getting their money. They're going to have some malicious code in there. And what that code's going to do is it's going to do a real quick inventory of that system. What browser did you connect up with? What operating system are you running? What patch levels? Are you running Java, ActiveX? What are you running? And then what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, this is the security posture of this system. Here's an exploit kit that's going to have a very high likelihood of success. And it's going to go after that a lot more targeted sort of attack. So web filtering, there's a couple components to it. Again, easy to do web filtering. Everybody's been doing that for a while. I think it's the web security side that we need to start taking a look at a little bit more depth. So I don't need to go into any more detail here. All right. So that was a lot of content. Didn't talk about product. We have products that help you out across the board in a lot of those areas. But really, again, what I think it comes down to is make sure that you're truly understanding your need and trying to set it up and do the things that you can do today with the stuff you already have, and then find your gaps and let's fill those gaps and let's get those taken care of. And then look at security as a system, define your policies as users, not devices. Start making that change, and then make sure that you're allowing for security bandwidth, allowing for security overhead in your infrastructure. If you don't, your security practice is already set up to fail, because people are not going to like security. They don't today, because we don't allow enough bandwidth. We don't allow for that overhead in our network designs. So that's all I have.
All right, well, we are, I think, very close to or a little over our time, so I apologize. But just looking at really quickly how Sophos can help, like Ben said, we're not going to go too deep into the product, but want to just make sure that you understand that there is a product for each of those categories. And we have things that are going to be able to help with the map unhackable. It isn't, so make sure that you've got the security in place. The email piece, our SPX encryption, and the different pieces that we're able to do. And if you do want more additional information, at sophos.com/7sins, there are additional 90-second videos on each of those different sections that you can go through and take a look, and that message is going to be delivered to you by James Line. And it's really great information, and I definitely encourage you to go out and continue to read about it, and then come talk to us about the ways that Sophos can help you mitigate those risks. Thanks so much, and have a great day today.